Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Miller. I am so excited, you guys. If you have gotten anything out of today thus far, I know I have. My notepad is full over here. If you have, type a yes, yes, yes in that comment section for me or some hand claps for me. I just want to get the energy going and continue to have this energy going. Let me start by introducing myself first. I'm Rachel Chisholm. As my twang and my slang probably already gave away, and my Memphis region, my background, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I am one of the club officers here at UAGC's Global Black Community Club. I want to just start off by giving you a little bit of information about what our session is about today. We have the pleasure of getting advice from a lawyer. So in this session, Attorney Tiara Greene will engage with an interview style talk with us where she will share some of her personal challenges she has encountered while pursuing her educational goals. So she'll emphasize what she, from the perspective of a Black woman in a white male dominated field, did to overcome those challenges. She will also discuss some tips and techniques that participants can adopt to stay motivated, inspired, and successful in their educational journeys. So we have the treat to not only walk away with applicable tips and techniques that we can apply to our own lives, but we'll also have the opportunity to ask Attorney Greene questions one-on-one in real time here in the session. So a little bit about Attorney Greene. She is a staff attorney at Juvenile Law Center who joined the organization in January 2021. She advocates for the rights of youth in juvenile justice system through litigation, amicus, and policy advocacy efforts. Prior to joining Juvenile Law Center, Ms. Greene's legal practice involved labor and employment litigation practice, as well as global data privacy compliance. Now, Ms. Greene has done a lot, okay? In 2014, she graduated from Rutgers School of Law, Camden. While in law school, Ms. Greene focused her work on juvenile justice and child advocacy through participation in the street law program, the Juvenile Justice Clinic, internships with the Child Advocacy Unit of the Defenders Association of Philadelphia, Educational Law Center, Juvenile Law Center. The list goes on and on with Ms. Attorney Greene. While at Rutgers, Ms. Greene also received the Mary Philbrook Public Interest Award for her dedication to work in the public interest field. Wow. Following law school, Ms. Greene clerked for the Honorable Thomas J. Shusted Jr. in the Family Division of Camden County Superior Court in New Jersey. Ms. Greene also holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree from Temple University, where she majored in criminal justice and graduated Phi Beta Kappa. Now, without further ado, I would really like you guys to give a welcome in the comments for Attorney Tiara Greene.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
That's great. You guys made me sound real extra special. I don't know. And Dr. Nude over there hyping me up. I hope I live up to his expectations in this here session. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm watching the chat and Percy says you deserve more than that, and I agree. I agree with that.
I appreciate that.
So guys, we're going to do this one a little differently than the other sessions. Most of them, we have a speaker coming up and they do their thing. For this session, we're going to go interview style. We have some questions we prepared for Attorney Greene, and we also want you guys to chime in. So if you have some things you'd like to know or like to hear or explore, then go ahead and type that in the chat. We'll be watching the chat as well. And we'll pop those in as we can pop them in, so you can kind of hear Attorney Greene's opinions. Now, don't ask her, how do you do a claim on your car insurance or something like that? We're not here for that. This is about you moving forward and going forward and bettering yourself via education or whatever other means. All right. So can I start with the first question, Rachel? Is that all right? Okay. So the first question I want to ask is because I'm just so excited to see. I always get happy when I see. I know her, so I call her Tiara. She's just a wonderful person from the time she was a child. I've known her all her life. And just tell us a little bit about yourself and you know, kind of what you do, why you chose your career, how that all kind of meshed together.
Sure. You can hear me still, just making sure. So Tiara Greene, I am obviously an attorney. I grew up in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. Started out in Chester, Pennsylvania until my mother moved us into the burbs to provide us with a better education. It was still a public school district, but it was a higher ranking school district. So she really sacrificed to put us in a position to do better and achieve. And my sister at the time was gifted. So it also helped boost her because she was in the gifted program and needed a bit more of a challenge. I initially thought about going to law school in undergrad, and I took a practice LSAT, which is the exam that you have to take similar to a GRE or similar to a SAT to get into law school. And I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. I was a criminal justice major, you know, law was not too far of a thought off. I took a practice LSAT and I said, absolutely not. I said, this is not for me. I said, it was only 3 hours of torture. And I said, this is not going to happen. This isn't for me. So dropped that idea. I went on and I graduated. And in between, everybody, when you graduate, there may be a time period where you're like, what's next? What do I do next? Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to be doing? I have this degree and this gives me prestige, right? But now what? Now, how do I pay the bills and the student loans, you know, where the people were knocking on the door. So I ended up getting a job as a juvenile detention officer, actually, in Lima, Pennsylvania. And it was a hands-on facility. So I was literally watching youth who had come into the system waiting for placement. So in the juvenile system, we don't call it going to prison necessarily, we call it disposition, because the goals of the system are supposed to be a little bit different. So kids, as they were awaiting disposition, they would come in and it was kind of like a holding facility in between. But we were hands-on, so we would restrain if we had to. We had a lot of youth come in with mental health issues, which the facility was not equipped to deal with. And the kids would also go in and out of court while they were there and often come back. And when they'd come back, they'd be complaining about their attorneys. They'd be like, my attorney doesn't even know me. My attorney didn't even look my way. She didn't read. She didn't even talk to me or read my case before she went up. So I kind of wanted to know what that was about a little bit. So ended up rethinking law school and applying again. So I actually studied for the LSAT while working full time as a juvenile detention officer. And I was on second shift. So I think I was working 3 to 11 p.m. And sometimes I'd get forced overtime. So I'd be working overnight. And I would just bring my books with me, did the best I could. I'm not a great standardized test taker. So the first time I took it, it wasn't great, but then I tried again. I studied harder and I jumped significantly the second time I took it. Still wasn't great. But it was enough to get me some offers for law school. And my first year of law school, I actually went to Florida. I went to a school called Stetson University in Gulfport, Florida. And I always thought I wanted to transfer back up north. So worked my butt off my first year and was able to transfer back up north. And I ended up at Rutgers where I finished out my education. And took the bar. I'm barred in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. At the time, we could take 2 bars at the same time. So again, hunkered down, took 2 bar exams, and I am now licensed in the state of New Jersey and the state of Pennsylvania. So that's kind of how I got here. And the kids stuff kind of motivated me to go. And then that's why, as the introduction showed, all of my experience and all of my activities in law school were geared toward like juvenile justice and child advocacy work.
Wow. That's heavy. That's heavy there. I don't know, Rachel, have you been watching? I see a question in the chat and I see a question in the questions. But You let me know, Rachel. Do you want to go with one of ours first, or one from the participants?
So I think let's go with Roderick here in the comments. It
Okay.
said, hello, Attorney Greene. What is the biggest challenge you face from the justice system when working with youth? Does the justice system support our youth?
No. Short and fast of it is no. So what my organization does is we actually we're a national organization, and we try to attack it from a systematic and policy-based perspective. So we go and look for laws that are on or backwards that can change, and we can push to change. So like, for instance, some of the things we do is push for the age of juvenile jurisdiction to be raised. And that just means that youth under a certain age cannot be subject to any kind of criminal system, which means they'd be dealt with more appropriately at home or with community services, to avoid them getting pulled into the system, because once you get pulled in, it's a lot harder to get out. So one of the things that is known is that Black and Brown youth are incarcerated far more often than non-Black and Brown youth. So the system does not support us. The system has changed over time significantly. It used to be a very rehabilitative approach where they recognize youth as youth, and that incarceration should not be, and punishment should not be the goal, but rehabilitation should be the goal. But as time went on, different cases, especially in the early 80s and 90s, that changed significantly. There were kind of tough on crime campaigns going on. Youth crime rose due to guns in the streets, and all types, and like the crack epidemic, and so many things changed where they moved away from this rehabilitative approach to a more penal and punishment approach. So for instance, in the state of New York, youth age 15 and 16 have automatically been transferred into the adult system regardless of the crime since the 1800s, early 1900s. And that's just starting to change. And that's because of this tough on crime approach that started transitioning over time. So no, the system does not support us, but hopefully people like me and other people like me who work in our organization are on the lookout for ways to change the laws to help better benefit youth. There's also an abolitionist movement out there. I'm not for or against the movement, but there's a movement out there where some think that there should not be youth prisons or incarceration or placements at all, and to dismantle the juvenile justice system. However, with anything, if you get rid of something, you have to replace it with something. So what they're trying to replace it with is, more investment into the community, more investment into social workers and other resources to try to help support families when youth are acting out.
So I'm gonna piggyback off that. Another person, I know we're off track a little bit than what we planned, but this is the way it works. Another person asked a question, Kelly Smith. Now she said, what inspired you to advocate for juveniles? So it sounds like you kind of just answered that. A
little bit. So so it's kind of twofold. As a detention officer, seeing kids come back from court complaining about their attorneys, that really motivated me. But I also had a difficult childhood myself, and not difficult in the sense of I was getting in trouble, but I was sick. So I was sick a lot. I was missing a lot of school, and the way the system is set up now, if I was a troubled kid and I was missing a lot of school, I'd be in truancy and I'd be going down a different path. But because I had good mentorship, it kind of took me in a different direction and took me more in the academic setting. And so that is another thing that makes me advocate on behalf of youth, because I had great mentors pour into me and pick me up at a young age without me having to ask. They saw me, they saw a need, they saw that I needed guidance, and they kind of took me under their wing. So I feel like similarly, if youth can get out of the system early with good mentorship, good resources, good people in their corner, they can also about face and have a chance to live a full adult life because once you turn 18 in the system, as you know, you're subject to the adult system, and it's just a different monster and a different uphill battle to climb. Hope that answers the question.
Love that, love that, love that. So it's about prevention, more about prevention than it is about trying to catch someone and
absolutely,
you know, be punitive.
So I guess I'll get us back on track with our next question.
No problem.
So our next question, Attorney Greene, what was the greatest challenge you encountered in obtaining your law degree? How did you overcome it? And what kept you motivated to do so?
I mean, the biggest practical challenge was money. You know, I don't come from a family with money. I put myself through school with loans, and those loans are now dictate what jobs I can and can't take, unfortunately, or what sacrifices I can and can't make. But I was told by a mentor early on that education is an investment in yourself. So I did what I had to do. I took out the loans. And I know that that's not everybody's path. Some people choose to work full time to try to help with that. For me, I didn't think that was the best option for me, knowing myself. So finances were probably the biggest hurdle. But I got over that by, unfortunately and fortunately, you know, taking out the loans that I had to. Other more practical obstacles, I broke my ankle my last semester of law school, but I did not let that stop me. I had friends who would pick me up. It was my right ankle, so I couldn't drive. So I had friends who would pick me up daily and take me to class, and I would wait around the school all day if I had to until somebody took me back home. I didn't miss a class. I graduated with a boot on my leg. I did what I had to do. So those kind of more practical obstacles. I think less practical was just law school is a very whitewashed world, to be blunt. There was 8 out of 300 in my incoming 1L class. And then when I transferred back up north, I think there were even less of us because the class was smaller. So in a given class, I was normally the only one out of a class of maybe 50 students. And I also didn't come from a line of attorneys. I knew nothing about law school. I knew nothing of how to succeed in law school. I did not know what I was doing whatsoever. All I knew was how to be a student. And when I was an undergrad, they told me you study. So I studied. And if I didn't know how to do it, then I'd ask. I relied on organizations like this one, the Black Law Student Association, and Black professors, and try to pull on them and talk to them. Or even if it wasn't a Black professor, anybody who would allow me to talk to them and get into their ear, I would seek out help where I could. But that obstacle of coming to a world where you know nothing about it, my mother didn't graduate from college. While I had an aunt who went to graduate school, no one had gone to law school before. I knew no lawyers. So I knew nothing about what I was doing. I had to figure out a lot along the way. That was probably the biggest challenge. Wow.
Well, we applaud your perseverance and your neuroplasticity, your growth mindset. You know, that's, you know, not to veer off a little, but as a professor here at University of Arizona Global, that's one of the biggest, that's what I champion at the university, is that we have many students that are not, that's not their culture. The college etiquette is not their culture. So we have to teach that while teaching the content, and to hear your story that from your side, you're willing to do the work to, you know, to fall into that, to learn that culture. That's encouraging to me as a professor, and I'm gonna make sure some of my colleagues hear this video. But you said something about, your background, your culture, and how the law field, or at least law school, was kind of, I'm going to say, monochromatic. Right?
That sounds a lot better than what I said. More politically correct, yes.
This kind of leads us into our next question. So do you feel as if you faced any challenges or expectations or limits or even privileges in your career path so far because you're a Black female?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have a two-edged sword, right? They say we have it double against us. I'm Black and I'm a woman. So my first, not necessarily in my clerkship, because I clerked right after law school, even though there was still only 2 out of maybe 15 or 20 clerks in the whole courthouse. So that was already a challenge of getting people to respect you. They didn't want to listen to you. They didn't, you were challenging or rubbing up against their authority or who they thought you should and shouldn't be. But I think the biggest challenge came when I went to a firm, and I was two of about 70 attorneys. There was no mentorship for me. I was labeled as quiet and unapproachable, even though I would walk through the halls and say hi, just like everybody else. But because I was a Black woman, and they could not relate to me for some reason, no one other than my direct supervisor, who was also a woman, would mentor me. So I felt like I was failing from the beginning because I had no help, and the standard I had to live up to was I had to be twice as good, but I had to learn how to do everything that my other colleagues were learning how to do, but on my own, because they had mentors to pour into them where I didn't. So they expected me to be just as good as them, and they expected me to learn as fast as them, but they weren't pouring into me like they were pouring into them. And then they expected my work to be pristine, even though I didn't have that extra leg up of having their mentorship. I'm sure you've all heard of implicit bias, and those theories, and how, you can put a paper in front of somebody, and depending on the name that you read, they can judge it differently if they see a Black name versus a white name, but I felt like some of that was going on as well, where they would see my work, and because they knew it was from me, it got more critiqued. And it didn't get critiques like, oh, this has promise and this could go somewhere. It was more so, oh, this is bad, you need to do better, So it was a very tough environment to be in. I don't think I had any privileges. I think that I was facing an uphill battle from the jump. And it seemed to be there was diversity at my firm in the sense of there was a lot of women, and it seemed to be that was how they wanted to check the box of diversity. So it was easier for them to pour into like the Women's Council and and have programs with the women and promote female empowerment than it was to promote like a more diverse group or promote other issues. So like I tried to make it a theme of supporting, like the Black Law Student Association had a Martin Luther King banquet every year, and I tried to get us a table every year. And the first year was a no, not enough people will be interested. And I had to keep pushing for that. But other students for other organizations that weren't color or race specific were able to get tables without problems, or they thought that the firm would benefit from participating in that event a little bit more. So it was always kind of bumping up against those kind of obstacles. And I did join the Women's Council once. They asked me to be one of the leaders. And it was hard for me because they were sitting there talking about inequity and inequalities. And I'm just like, but you're here, you're at the table. Can we talk about these issues that aren't being addressed over here? So I've always felt more Black than I've ever felt like a woman in this profession.
So some of the things that you've done to overcome it were just perseverance, just keep going, or?
So I eventually left the firm because I couldn't take it anymore. I felt like I wasn't growing. I felt like I was miserable. There was no way I could get ahead. So I just knew that environment wasn't for me. But while I was there, I talked to my supervisor as best I could. I asked for ways to improve. I sought out ways to work with other people. And even when those opportunities came, I still wasn't really much recognized for those efforts. So eventually I did leave and went elsewhere. But and you'll learn if you go into the legal field that there are statistics about Black women leaving firms at an alarming rate because of different hypotheses and reasons, but most of the time it's a lack of mentorship, or a lot of assumptions about why they're leaving, or why they're not functioning well in that environment. For me, it was just, I didn't feel like I could get a leg up. I didn't feel like I would ever be able to excel in that environment. And I hated billable hours. If you know anything about law firms, it's billable hours where every 10 seconds, every 0.1 of an hour, you are clocking your time. And that is also how you are graded. So it's not about necessarily your work. It's about how much work you can get done in a short amount of time. So I also hated billable hours. But so I think for me, it was doing what I could while I could, as long as I could, until it no longer suited me, and then sought out other opportunities that fit better.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not gonna rabbit trail. I could rabbit trail on that one, but she opened up a couple of cans of worms there. But we're gonna turn it over to you, Rachel. What would you like to ask at this point?
Okay, so we're talking about your professional life. This next question kind of piggybacks off that. In your professional life, on a scale from 1 to 10, has your educational accomplishments been helpful? So have your educational accomplishments been helpful in your professional life on a scale of 1 to 10?
I say yes, and like an 8. I feel like I wouldn't qualify for the jobs that I have if I did not have the education that I have. Law school also specifically trained me for the legal profession in certain ways. So it taught me how to think like an attorney. It taught me how to write like an attorney. And reading and writing is essentially all you do as an attorney. You research and you write almost all day.
Wow.
So I was a very poetic writer before law school. I actually wrote poetry, and I loved for my papers to flow beautifully and have these nice metaphors. And I get to law school, they're like, nah, cut, chisel. You need to get to the point, you know? So it definitely teaches you how to streamline and how to write in a very different way. You have to learn to write in a persuasive way. So I definitely learned those skills from law school, and then taking classes like trial advocacy and evidence and all those things do train you for the profession itself. What's hard about the legal profession is that you have to take the bar exam to qualify to practice. And the bar exam, the first day they tell you, forget everything you learned in law school. I'm going to teach you how to pass the exam, and all you need is a pass. So all you need is a D, and you can become an attorney. So it kind of messes with your mind a little bit, because you just spent 3 years perfecting one thing. And then they're like, okay, now we're going to teach you how to take this exam. And this exam will qualify you to now practice in this field. So it's just the world we live in. It's a little bit messed up, but it's just the world we live in. So I definitely say that without the education I have, I would not be qualified for the jobs that I have.
So I got to backtrack. So
You about to get us in trouble.
Yeah, I think I am. Yeah. When you talked about, the struggles you met as a Black female in, in your field, and especially at that particular firm. So you've moved on from that firm, but so about a year ago now, so we've had the whole, I'm going to say, social awareness movement, if you will, triggered from the George Floyd incident. So there's been a lot of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion efforts with a lot of companies, a lot of places, allyism, all these buzz terms and things going on. Do you see any difference at all right now in the legal arena?
Yes and no. I mean, in the job that I have right now, we are a nonprofit organization, and we are very woke, quote unquote. So there is a lot of DEI work. There's a lot of allowing space for people to express how they're feeling. There's a lot of space for trying to diversify the office by gender, by sexual orientation, by anything you can imagine. They're trying to open up the floodgates to allow any kind of inclusion in the office. So those efforts are definitely made. There's trainings that are happening to make sure that the managing partners and the managing directors are more sensitive to those issues and what their minority or Black and brown employees could be dealing with, especially when those issues come up. I cannot speak to what's going on in the firm world. I imagine there's always been a DEI officer, usually in every firm. It's more prevalent now, and they are diversifying, or they're trying to diversify the work. But what I've seen happen is that they're trying to diversify a number only, and it doesn't really make a difference in the way that they see different people and different qualifications for different races and people from different backgrounds. So some organizations are more about show than it is about truly trying to diversify the workplace and truly understanding what a diversified workplace, how that can work for you and benefit you and your business in different ways. So I think it really depends on the organization. I mean, firm life is all about come in and do your work. We don't talk about feelings. We don't talk about what's going on at home. If you need a vacation, if you're having a mental breakdown, you go have that on your own time and you come back when you get it together. And the organization I'm in now, it's very much, we bring that to work. And that's very new for me because it's no longer, yeah, go deal with that at home. We still have work to do. It's very much, we can't deal with that until we deal with what's going on in the world. And there are pros and cons to that, of course. So I think it's mixed. I think the world is trying, but I don't think everybody is trying for the right reasons.
I like that one. I might tweet that one. Everyone's trying, but not for the right reasons. Mm-hmm. That's a good one. I'm sorry to take us off track, but can I bring us back on track, Rachel? All right, Rachel's giving me a go ahead so I can talk some more. So getting back to your whole professional journey, if you will, right? Well, education, how education is kind of concerned. Do you think there was anything you might have done differently in your education journey, just kind of looking back?
I think everything happens for a reason. So I don't know if I would necessarily say I'd do something different. I think the one myth that needs to be debunked is that you shouldn't go to community college first and then go on to a four-year university. It was very much looked down upon if you went to like community college for 2 years and then you transferred to a different university. If you didn't get accepted into a university the first time, or if you even made that choice just to save money, it was very much looked down upon. However, your first 2 years of college, you are taking core curriculum classes that you can take at community college for less money. So if I could do it again, I probably would definitely take more course. I would probably do 2 years at community college and then transfer over because I went to a state institution, so my tuition wasn't as bad because I went to a state school, but there are private schools where people are paying astronomical amounts of money to explore what they want to do essentially through core curriculum classes, which you could be taking very cheaply at a community college. So I think that would be the biggest thing I could have changed. I could have saved a little bit of money if I had just had a different perspective of what that world looked like, or what that prestige or lack of prestige of going to a community college versus a four-year university looked like. I mean, at this point, education is education. After a while, they stopped looking at where you went to school. They stopped looking at the GPA. So yeah. It doesn't really matter as much
can you do the work? Can you do the work?
Is what matters.
Yeah, right. I think we can all relate to that. Kelly says, I went to community college first and it was a great decision I ever made. So yeah, we can agree to that. Kind of on the tip with education as well, what are your top 3 tips that you would give to students who are pursuing their degree but have other life obligations going on around them? It's a good one.
So I think I would first think of education as an investment in yourself. A lot of times we put on hold things like education because of family obligations, because of distractions we have going on. But think of the long-term investment, which would be the second tip, because you can't help anybody else until you help yourself, essentially. So you got to think of it as an investment in yourself. So you're pouring into you, and then think of long-term goal. What will the end goal be if I get this degree now? Will I be in a better position to help and a better position to overcome these obligations if I put my head down now, study and do what I have to do, even if it is just to get that piece of paper, even if there are people who are more qualified without that piece of paper. What if the job is telling me I need this piece of paper, if I will be better trained by getting this piece of paper, put my head down, do what I have to do now so that I can help and have a better perspective on those obligations later on in life. I think the third one I'd say is use your resources. There are people around you. There are academic success programs. There are resources at school that a lot of students do not take advantage of to help them along the way. If you are struggling in class because of a home obligation, go talk to somebody about it. There are a lot of ways to accommodate schedules. There are a lot of ways to, if you have to take less classes, schools really will work with you if you go talk to somebody about it. But I think a lot of times people drop out, or they think they can't do it because of other things and other distractions that are going on because they failed to talk to somebody about it. So, I mean, I want to share a personal story, but I need an okay from Dr. Newt first. Yes. Okay.
It's your show.
So this was after law school, but when I was clerking, September, October, so I started clerking in September and November of 2014, my sister died suddenly. I called my judge the night it happened, and I left him a message, and I did not hear from my judge. So I went to work the next day. And I showed up and I was like, did you get my message? And he was like, no. And I told him what happened. He was like, why are you here? And like sent me home. And that was a significant life thing that happened in the middle of a training ground. So I had just graduated from law school. I had not gotten any bar results. I took the bar exam, hadn't gotten any bar results. This was the training ground that would determine where I went next. That would determine what job I got next. But I was so afraid of losing my job, and I was so afraid of leaving the judge hanging, that such a heavy life event like losing my sister, I went to work because I did what I had to do. But all I had to do was talk to him. All I had to do was talk to the judge and tell him what was going on. And he understood that I'm a human and that life happens and things happen to affect you. And he sent me home. And from that moment on, he was trying to be accommodating. Like, I came to work the next week, and I honestly at that point needed work. I needed a distraction from being home, being sad and thinking about I had just lost a significant person in my life. But because I had talked to my judge, he made accommodations for me. He made accommodations for me to talk to other clerks to help with the workload. He made accommodations for me to still get the experience I had and still get the experience I needed, but still deal with what's going on at home, to still deal with what some would consider a distraction in their life or something else that's going on in their personal life. So I share that story to say you have to talk to people sometimes. Sometimes you have to share what's going on so that they can lend a hand where they can, or they can give you the proper advice to tell you how you can get through or how you can move forward and still achieve your goals, even when life happens.
Wow. I didn't know you went to work the next day. Good Lord. I
went to work the next day.
Good Lord. Wow. So, man, she kind of put a lump in my throat right there.
I'm sorry. I knew I needed your approval.
That's rare.
That is. That's definitely something that I can relate to, Tiara. Just this time last year, lost all in 7 days. I lost my brother. I started a new job. I moved into a new apartment, and I started school at UAGC all in 7 days. And so I know this is not a commercial for our university, but I appreciated the fact that we had resources and mentors and people available to kind of walk me through that process. So I agree. It's very important.
Yes.
So Go ahead, Dr. Will, and get us back on a lighter note.
No, if you want to ask another question, there's a question from the audience, but we have about 3 or 4 minutes. So how do you want to handle it? Rachel?
That time went by fast. So I think our question from Dolores Jones is about book publishing. She says, what are your thoughts about publishing a book to enhance upcoming attorneys in the field of study?
Oh Lord, I don't know if I'm a book person. I honestly don't feel, I don't feel like I did anything special. I feel like I did what I was supposed to do, and I did what I had to do. So I went to school, and from school, I graduated. I didn't know what to do. I went to work. From work, I saw an issue. I went back to school. And then I just did what I knew to do, which was to study, had some help along the way to figure out how to master law school, which was the most difficult thing I had done in life. And I swear I'm never going back to school because of it. But I just did what I was supposed to do. I know that there are people out there who have already written books. A colleague of mine actually wrote a book about her, a law school colleague of mine, about her journey, and she she self-published it out there. I don't know if that's in the cards for me quite yet, but who knows what the future will hold.
Yeah. So kind of on a closing tip, I think you kind of gave us 3 tips that people can use, to keep it going. And we put those 3 tips in the chat. So if you were to leave us with one statement, something that we could put in our emotional bank account, so when things get rough, and we need to draw out of that bank account so we could just take one more step, what would you say to us? What would you tell people?
I mean, I don't know how motivational it is, but the thing that got me through was what I've already shared, which was, this is an investment in yourself. If you won't do it for you, who will?
Wow.
When I was complaining about taking out one more student loan, my mentor said, you got to think of it as, this is an investment in yourself. Who's going to do better for you than anybody else?
I think that kind of sums it up. My dad used to say, first, self-preservation is the first law of nature. And right after that, he would say, ain't nobody gonna care about you like you care about yourself. So that falls right in line with what you just said. Thank you. Are there any last words you want to put out there, Rachel or Tiara?
I have no last words. I mean, if anybody has questions or wants to reach out, my organization is jlc.org. If you want to know more about the organization, you can reach me at tgreene with the E on the end at jlc.org or tiarag88@gmail.com. And I'm willing to answer or talk to anybody. If you wanted to chat, just
outstanding.
Send me a message.
Outstanding. And I missed it. Oh, okay. Thank you, Rachel.
That's the last one.
Thank you, Rachel. Well, you guys, we're going to go ahead and sign off for this session and give it a couple minutes break and get ready for the next session. All of Tiara's information is in there. You have a bunch of thank yous. Thank yous. I was watching this throughout the time. People are motivated. They are so grateful to hear from you. Live, young, black girl power attorney who came up from all the odds and beat them all. And it looks like she has a lot more that she's going to beat and conquer. So watch her. You guys, we appreciate you logging in. Thanks, Attorney Greene. You guys have a great day.
Thank you for having me.